All right. Again, we were tasked, obviously, with talking what we've dubbed at this point free enterprise zones. It's really about an urban strategy, as we discussed. If you're going to the next slide. Basically, we sort of approached this like, why do we want to do this? Why is it important? These are the issues we came up with. It's largely an unserved, untargeted field right now, and that we definitely think that's a big reason of why the existing team, the existing structures we have in place are largely unable to penetrate. That's a big fundamental reason why we feel like this is an important initiative to consider, whether it's a gatekeeper, sort of an official person, or just the mechanism of security. It's definitely a barrier. It improves our opportunity to penetrate these densely populated areas. Again, no surprise, everybody knows as you walk into one building, there may be 50 businesses or 100 businesses in one space, and we can't talk to them effectively today. So we definitely think that's a big reason why to do it. And the way we've sort of carved these out or sort of segmented them off, we do feel like at this point there will be an impact to the current systems, but it should be a low impact. Meaning the existing engines can continue to function largely as they do today, very likely bumping into each other a little bit on the fringe, but it wouldn't be like massive take a state away type approach. So anyway, that's sort of the why we came up with. Details behind it, again, what we're recommending is to find 10 free enterprise zones, large dense cities across America, targeting a cross-section of America, so we don't want to sort of target LA and New York and leave Houston or some of the more conservative areas untouched. So we kind of looked at middle America versus coastal. We do like the idea of going with super states just because there's some infrastructure in place and some tools in those states that may not be available in other states. So I think California would be one, Texas, and wherever else we have sort of a super state presence, and that'll come up with a little bit later too. But again, focusing on large metro areas by zip code, because that's sort of the demographic we're redefining a lot of our, especially field effort around. So defining a zip code, a boundary, that becomes the urban target, or the free enterprise target. Enhancing tools to improve transparency, again, we feel like that's a critical component because quite frankly it will help field, it will help telephone if there's some visibility into what's going on in that area, and some of which we talked about yesterday too. But this will allow channels to play in the same space. We do feel like that's important because even though we're going into Houston, we'll pick on, there's still the gas station, there's still the bakery that we may not be targeting. We have to have a system where the field can walk in and talk to them, and ideally, being the tech guy, I'm telling you we're a ways away from this, but ideally we would be able to have some transparency that, hey, the field rep just walked in there, or they would know, hey, we just sent an email to that business, so when they go in and talk to them, it's not a surprise. It's, yeah, I know you just got an email, we'd like to talk to you about that. And I think Jeff was pretty adamant that that would be a really good warm-up. So again, enhancing the tools, allowing them to play in the same space, keep the tools and process simple. Again, we started going down some sort of rabbit holes, and we said, whoa, let's back up and just keep it simple. The fact is, we just need a good list. We need to keep the zip code definition set up and not slice and dice and try to get too fancy on it because it just makes all of our systems complicated. Target sources, we were just sort of dreaming, how do we get the list? How do you know, how does marketing or the sales effort that gets spun up around this know? Obviously Compass, our current lead database, is going to have a lot of those businesses, but there's also social scraping, and there's probably a dozen other good ideas that marketing could feed into it. But that would become sort of the target pool set within those zip codes. Tactics is, we see it as predominantly electronic formats. Obviously email is a key entree into those. Every email has firewall issues, but every email gets beyond the security guard and the gatekeepers. The mobile application that we're working on this year, I think rolling into next year, could be a key play in this space. Really promoting that as a way to get into those more professional type offices. Speaking in local events, this is where some of the super state concepts came up also. We do think that there's a way, I saw guns and I'm like, how do we get guns in there? I mean, these could be hired guns. All we're saying is, they don't have to be full-time employees. They can be people sort of that we go out and leverage. So when they're speaking, they're not speaking about NFIB, they're speaking about small business issues, and saying, if you want a great app, for instance, toward the end of this year, if you want a great app to keep up with small business issues, here's how you can get it, and they promote our app. Well, that app then gives us and the marketing folks a direct link into a business owner that we can begin to message them and convert them. We know their level of loyalty and their level of connectivity. So again, it's not so much that we're not hiring people to go talk about NFIB and what we do and why you want to be a member. Again, it's really the other way around. Here's the importance, here's statistics on the number of regulations that are coming out and affecting you. Here's how you can stay up to date on them. So again, we talked about leveraging existing resources, some of the state directories, and some of the existing resources we have in-house for possible speaking engagements, especially if we're in Houston. It's a reasonable expectation that we can get somebody to show up and talk about small business issues. If there's an active response, and these are all measurable, we can know who's clicking on emails, we can know who's clicking through, we can know who's downloading the app, we can know a lot about that potential member. Then we like the idea of spinning up an outbound call option, which may be a couple people at first, but if it takes off, we can ramp up fairly easy, and really leveraging Vicky's resources down in Boca to begin to make outbound calls to those and say, hey, I know you've been interested in these types of issues. Would you consider becoming a member, however that pitch goes? But we think there is an outbound opportunity at that point. Obviously, with these types of communications, there'll be some level of conversion marketing has to do to acquire phone numbers. Once we get that phone number and they're actively engaged, it gives us the opportunity to make an outbound call. Leveraging partnerships, again, we just don't feel like we got to go this alone. We think we've got Solveras, we've got a lot of partners out there, Granger, maybe not so much, but we've got other partners that are actually talking to people and are making a pitch for their business. And to the extent, again, there's small business issues, maybe there's an opportunity to promote probably more the mobile app again in that space. And I think our last slide, we tried to do a quick little SWOT analysis. Again, some of this will be repeat, but I think there'll be some new issues on here. We saw the strength is very low disruption, which we talked about, to the existing system. Low cost of sales. This will very likely be one of the least expensive ways to make sales within the organization. Targeting a new member demographic. Again, as we stipulated, we can't really get into these folks. So this gives us a whole sort of spin up of, we talk about 6 to 10 million small businesses. Well, realistically, there's half of those we don't even really talk to because we can't, again, the gatekeeper's a big problem there we see. But it's also a scalable solution in that we leverage technology. The difference between sending 3,000 and 10,000 emails is marginal. It's a half a cent on email or whatever it is. Once the mobile app's built, there's no cost to have somebody download it and take it. It's all just reducing the cost we've already spent essentially. Opportunities, again, we see a really good opportunity on market penetration, increasing the member count, kind of symbiotic to that. We see an opportunity in leveraging the existing partnerships, which we've already talked about, and really we see a strong opportunity in strengthening our brand and our brand awareness in these denser areas, especially if we really are able to spin up the speaking engagement opportunities because it becomes part of the brand. Weaknesses, we have limited channels. It's like we got email, we got a few electronic ones, but we can't drop flyers off in everybody's door and that kind of thing. So, the fact is we've got certain channels into these members. We've got to be able to leverage those for our maximum benefit. Sales buy-in, again, there can be a weakness in that. We just got to think through it. It does have an impact anytime. You all know the drill. Anytime we do that, there's a little bit of reticence out there. So there would be a weakness in the buy-in. Prospect list, I think, again, there could be a weakness there. How effective it is, how clean it is it accurate? If you go buy a list, what does that mean? That kind of thing. Brand recognition and marketness, we actually see that as a weakness because, do these people know about us? Do they know what we serve and why we're doing what we're doing? Threats, historical bias. I think, we look at the organization and there's been some efforts in these spaces, some attempts, and there can be sort of, well, we've tried that in the past, therefore, I just think the world's different now than it was 4 or 5 years ago with social media. This is a much more acceptable form of interacting and communicating with people. Insufficient funding could be a very big threat. If this is a $500,000 problem and we decide to give 50 grand to it, are we really going to get a good test and a good assessment of how well it's functioning? And then lack of internal resources. Again, somewhat level or indicative or connected to the funding, but we do have to have some resources in-house that are dedicated to this effort. We have 10 cities. We're probably going to need somebody to very actively manage it. It'd be somewhat analogous to firing up a Facebook page and then not doing anything with it. Are you really going to get the likes and the friends and all the stuff that you want out of it? But if you're out there every day putting 15 posts and connecting to Twitter and connecting to all the other social components, it builds that up over time. But that takes energy and time and a human. So anyway, that was it.